I'm Matthew Kerbis, the subscription attorney, and this is Law Subscribed, your dedicated source for all things subscriptions and the law. Thank you to my sponsors. See links to them in the show notes. Everything discussed is only for educational and entertainment purposes. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode in the joint series between Lauren Lester and Mathew Kerbis. Yes, I just referred to myself in the third person about how to run a law firm in 2025. Listening to this in 2026 or thereafter, still a lot of hopefully very relevant information. We talked last episode about evergreen content. We're trying to make this very relevant for those listening in 2025, but I still think there's going to be a lot of great value for folks who are listening to this at some other point in the future. With that said, coming off the marketing conversation, we don't want to totally leave that zone of being a law firm owner because there are other aspects to that we can get even more granular with. So one of the things that we're going to talk about on this episode is we're going to talk about elevator pitches or just pitching your business in general, maybe putting together some actual physical materials and like how we go about doing that. And while we will have some episodes, or at least an episode dedicated to technology, we're going to be talking about some tech probably for this conversation too. So with starting off with that, Lauren, what have you been doing? Like how is in particular like transitioning from one practice to another? Like you got to change up your pitch. So you've been thinking about it maybe fairly recently, but also like what were some lessons that you learned when you used to pitch your business in another way and now you're pitching your business in a different way now?
Yeah, it's been a struggle for sure. So having multiple practice areas has been lovely from a practice standpoint because I don't do one thing all day every day and I get bored and burnt out. But it's hard to create an umbrella that covers them all. So I have run around with a couple of different ideas over the years. I have landed on protecting your peace is something that I personally very much believe in. So I feel like that resonates with my clients. But I think that that applies to prenups, to estate planning, and to tax debt resolution. It's a little bit in the financial space. So sometimes I will use protecting your financial piece, protecting what matters most. So things like that. It's not something that I landed on 9 years ago and have kept. I wish that was the case. But I think the good news is you can try something out for a little bit, see how it feels, see if you naturally sort of go in a different direction and what's going to resonate with your potential clients. But for me, that's the sort of memorized line that I can use. I fell into adding tax debt resolution to be able to tell folks when I want to get a little bit of a smile that I do death and taxes. Everybody seems to remember that. So life's certainties and then also prenups because I never want to forget about those. So I kind of make the joke there, but it's the least memorable. So really trying to think about your practice area and what regular words you can use, not legal jargon. I don't tell folks that I do probate. Nobody understands what the heck probate is, but I do talk about, right, when a loved one dies, making sure that their wishes are fulfilled. So things like that I have gotten pretty good at in terms of my elevator pitch. The exact phrasing isn't wonderful. I know I'm sure it could use some work, but it's all a work in progress. But that has been the key for me is trying to find a bigger umbrella. That's been the biggest struggle. I know you've been focused mostly for the last 3 years on being a general counsel, kind of that fractional GC. Has it been easier to identify that elevator pitch?
You know, it's definitely not easier, but I'll do my one of my favorite versions of a pitch because that's the thing, like, you need different versions. I'm gonna do it right now. It's a jingle, and in the right context, it slaps. It's awesome. Okay, here we go. For a reasonable monthly price, you can subscribe to legal advice. When it comes to cost, let me be frank. Work with a lawyer before there's a problem and it won't break the bank. So when you're ready to keep your legal problems gone, go to subscriptionattorney.com. I'm Matthew Kerbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I help clients get back to what they enjoy in their life and their business by giving me all their legal things so they don't have to worry about it. You can get a free 15-minute call by going to subscriptionattorney.com.
I love it. I'm so curious, what context does that work in? I mean, it works. You should just do that all the time, but you may not have the total time to be able to go through it all.
I'm debating, like, actually, I do have a keyboard that I could, like, plug into my to my Mac, and I might actually like, try to come up with some music for it, and then you might see it on YouTube. But I've got music in my head, believe me, when I do that one. Like we talked about in the marketing episode, so if you haven't listened to that, this is a great companion episode. They're all a great companion episodes, but especially the marketing one. I do a lot of in-person marketing, right? And so, like, I'm in person networking at chamber events, at other networking functions for other networking groups. Some of them are paid, some of them are unpaid. And I don't do any of the ones that are like unreasonably expensive. What I find though is for groups that like always meet up and they always have a chance to do like a commercial or a pitch or like say a little bit about their business, you don't want to do the same thing every time because what was once very impressive or catchy or memorable suddenly becomes tried. And like you're just like, oh, again with the jingle. So you got to be careful, right? Context matters. And that's when you were talking, Lauren, about like, what you do and how you think about it, like, that was what I wrote down to make sure we talked about is context matters. Virtually, I don't know, I've never done that virtually before, Lauren. You reacted pretty well to it, so I may do that virtually again. Yeah, like, well, we'll see how that happens. It works really well in person. I would not respond to somebody saying, "Oh, what kind of lawyer are you?" or "What kind of attorney are you?" I wouldn't go
With a
into the
jingle?
jingle. Right? Like, so context matters because that's a version of pitching yourself too. And actually, that's where I still struggle when somebody goes, what kind of lawyer are you? Because longtime listeners of Law Subscribe know I am not like any other kind of lawyer. And so, and not just on my pricing, just like in general. So for that, sometimes depending on the context and what I know about the person, from the context, I might not know anything about the person, but like we're at a party or at something, and not like I'm going to parties, but like a dinner party, like where our kids are running around or something, right? Like we just had a friendsgiving. If you want to put a timestamp on when we recorded this conversation, and, what kind of lawyer are you? Like, well, you know how like big companies have full-time in-house, like full-time attorneys that just work just for that company? I'm like fractional that, like for small business owners and for just people in their lives. So they could call on me like that business calls on the attorney that works for the company. And that's how I explain that. But I still even struggle with thinking that that fully conveys what I do. And I say I do it, I'm the subscription attorney. So I do it at a reasonable monthly price. And I'm that fractional attorney for a small business owner or for somebody's life. And, I've had mixed results with something like that.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I always struggle with like the time piece. Like you're, at a networking event or you're talking with somebody and they'll say, well, what do you do? And I know I shouldn't answer it with, well, I'm an attorney or, I do estate planning and probate and tax debt, whatever. I mean, and I also have 6 practice areas, so I have to rattle these things off. I know that that's not great. I will definitely admit there are some times I just say that because I don't really want to get into it and I'm not trying to be the marketing light is not on currently, but I struggle with having an elevator pitch that's quick, the way that it's really hard, like you said, those constraints I think you said last time when you're creating a video can be really helpful because they really force you to put the most valuable words together. You don't have all these extraneous words and extraneous thoughts, but I still struggle with how do I do that when I'm meeting someone or talking about my practice. And it's a lot of practice. It's a lot of I tried it one way with one person and I tried it another way and I tried to see what stuck and what felt good, what felt like I wasn't tripping over my own words. My friend Angela says that marketing is a act of memorization, and so it has to be something I think we can memorize, although to your point, it cannot be so rote that it just doesn't fit the context. But at the same time, I think there's a benefit to folks knowing what the jingle is because they'll always remember that and they'll go to you when they have those problems. So yeah, I really struggle with how do I get it out in 3 seconds or 5 seconds, especially when you have more of a robust practice area or an area that just takes a minute to kind of explain to, the average person who's not in the profession and doesn't get it.
Yeah. Yeah, being in the profession, like, that's the hard thing. David Foster Wallace has that speech about swimming in water, right? And, like, you don't even realize you're swimming in water. And so trying to break free from that is a first important step. And then after that, you can start thinking about it. And look, you use AI, right? Like type it into even if you just use the free right now, it's like ChatGPT 4.0 mini model. I really like Claude though too. I think they're on Sonnet 3.5. I don't know. The naming conventions make no sense for these things. Or even Gemini, right? And just use the free versions of all these things and like have a conversation about, well, how would you say this in lay terms? Or how would you say this to an audience of small business owners who don't have the legal background, right? Like, and like work with the AI tools like you would an assistant and don't just put it in and expect an answer. You put it in, you get an answer. You ask a follow-up question just like you would with a person, right? So, and you could even prompt it and say, "You are a marketing strategist for a solo practice law firm owner." And that's me. Like, give it the context when doing something like that to help do the translations. And to be fair, like to your point, Lauren, like I have trouble on my marketing materials of how to convey this, right? So like I'm in Canva and I think you use Canva too. So I just pulled up Canva here and I have a little flyer. So I had an opportunity and like sometimes it's just like opportunities, right? So like I never thought I'd make a flyer. I did make a one pager and I made a business card, but I never thought I'd make a flyer. Well, there was some Chamber of Commerce event where for $50, I was able to put 250 flyers in bags that everybody who came to this local event like got a bag and they were like a local person in town. It was like one of that type of situations. I was like, $50 for an advertising opportunity like that? Amazing. So I started with my business card, which I already had on Canva, and I converted it, and it uses like AI to do these things to a flyer size, like a postcard sized format. And so like it kind of looks like it's if somebody has seen my business card, there's like motifs that are very similar to that. And I have on there like just literal bullets. I mean, aesthetically, it looks good and Canva helps with that, but it's bullet points, contracts, prenups, real estate plans, business law, negotiations, avoid court. And that's all on the front of the flyer in the bottom left corner next to my picture. And on the top is just like a more traditional business card, a QR code, my logo, or my a QR code with my logo, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes for folks, or if you're subscribed at lawsubscribe.com, you'll see that there too. I think I could just embed that right there. A transparent price for legal advice, like my firm motto, which I'm even thinking about shifting that up because I don't actually ever say that when I'm pitching my firm. Talk about like a difference. Maybe it's good to have similar things or different things. Well, yeah. What do you think about that? Like, do you try to have like this brand synchronicity like between all that stuff, or do you do things differently?
I will do things differently. I consistently come back to affordable attorney because I think I'm sure you feel the same way. That differentiates me pretty quickly because most folks don't want to call themselves that, and
Hmm.
I'm proud to wear that moniker. So that will help. And then yes, it'll depend on the context or like if it's a business card, right? I'm very limited in space whereas if I'm doing a one pager, maybe I will use different language. Where I always come back to, which helps me when I kind of feel like I'm in the water and not realizing I'm in the water and just kind of floating, is what problem am I solving?
Hmm.
And that always, when I'm doing my elevator pitch, it's again not about me and my credentials and like, what problem is the person who is picking up this flyer potentially having or doesn't know that they have? How can I explain it in that way? And so that always seems to ground me. So I love that idea of putting just a bullet list. Like this doesn't have to be like genius Shakespeare sonnets going on here. Like it can be really simple and that's actually probably better because folks will understand that. But I love that idea. There's a my kids swim lesson place. When we walk in, there's like a community board. I've seen this like in coffee shops too. And
Hmm.
businesses will put just a little either business card or kind of that little index card sized flyer, I guess, on those, and every time I walk in, I'm like, I gotta make one, but I'm struggling with, like, what do I make the big call that would make someone go, "Oh, that's interesting, let me pull that out."
Yeah, yeah, and really, I don't even know if I have that on the front of this flyer, truly, but on the back because I have a client who has UPS franchises. I actually have several clients now with UPS franchises, and so I'm gonna use them to do the printing, even though through Canva they do make it really easy to just like find a local printer to you and do it. And they were like, "Well, you got to put something on the back." Because what happens if it's like ends up in a pile or something's on the back? So I was like, "Oh shoot! Like I got to put something on the back." So networking events, like and then that jingle, by the way, I did not come up with that. Like that was 2 years. Like I did not come up with that right away. That was 2 years of me pitching myself and trying different pitches and hearing some other people do a jingle and being like, "Oh, that's really catchy. I remember that person." So like you don't have to come up with a jingle right away. Workshop it. Like I almost felt like a stand-up comic, like going to small comedy clubs before I was like going to do the Madison Square Garden or something, right? And in those all those multiple different versions of pitches, I was like, well, what do I put on the back of this flyer? And I thought, well, I'll adapt something from the pitch. So like on the back of the flyer, it just has my firm name up top, a slightly different aesthetic design, but it mirrors the first one kind of. and it says, "Get back to what you enjoy in your life and your business," which goes back to what you said, Lauren, of like, what problem are you solving? You don't like to do legal things. You don't have to worry about legal stuff. Get back to what you enjoy in your life or your business. The next line is offload legal needs to an experienced attorney. I've played around with attorney with more than 10 years of experience, but it just seemed too wordy. And then legal advice starts at 19.99 a month and 49.99 a page, and it's, like, spelled out, so it's very clear, like, $20 a month, $50 a page, boom, cost. I think it's good to put cost if you know what your prices are. All subscriptions are 30-day cycles and month to month, which are questions I get on these free 15-minute calls. Well, is it really like, what if should I wait another day to subscribe because it's the start of the next month? So I get that a lot, so I figured put that on here. It's a common question. And then flat fees for specific services are all listed on the website because you don't want to list all your pricing, right? And then my website beneath that. So like that's and I big font. You don't want to put too much spaced out. And Canva does these great things where it tells you how if it's evenly spaced and how much space, and it suggests certain things. So all in Canva, super easy. Canva is one of those no brainer subscriptions that I pay every year. And so it goes back and forth with like and workshopping that helped me. Well, I used to say your life or your business. I didn't really like how that looked written down. So I changed it to life and your business. So doing both of these things, verbal pitches, written down pitches, like these will help you market your business. And I've literally had a client tell me that they saw one of these flyers and that was why they hired me. So at least I know it's converted one client.
Yeah, I mean, that's well worth the investment. I use Canva too. Do you start with the, like, templates that they have to create things, or are you just that good and you start with a blank page?
Oh, no, I definitely do not start with a blank page. One of the benefits of the paid subscription is you get access to pro templates, and I definitely leverage the pro templates and more recently some of these AI features. But, like, I also make, like, my kid's birthday invitation in Canva too because it's that good.
Yeah, it's so great. I think I use it for social media posts, for creating flyers, for creating my business card. I think any designy thing, I think my logo, I think I made in there, I use Canva for. It is so helpful.
And you could do animations too. So, like, if folks check out the Law for Kids podcast, you'll see, like, the name pops up in the image and there's things moving around on the screen, like, some of that's in Descript, but most of that was in Canva, and it's really easy and user-friendly to do in Canva. I have a philosophy degree. I am not technical. I don't know how to code, although I've been learning Python a little bit because Replit, you could do, like, Gen AI-based prompting to, like, make simple apps, and you kind of pick up some Python as a result of that, which is really weird. So I still like to say I don't know how to code, which I think is an accurate statement. So you don't need to be technical lawyers to use a tool like Canva is the point.
Yeah, it's really helpful. And I think, making it look good and aesthetically pleasing is one thing. And I like the idea of if you have a color scheme or a general motif, it's nice to have that be consistent across the board so that your branding isn't all over the place intentionally. But if you need to pivot and you don't like the way it is, and next year you want to do something different, like don't let it hold you back. But if you can replicate it, I think it does help keep your brand more in line. But the point is Canva will do a lot of the heavy lifting with the design aspect of it. You don't have to have that skill set. I think where we need to do the work is defining the problem that we solve and making sure that's really clear. Like the content, the actual words you use is where you want to focus. Don't worry so much on the aesthetics of it because you've got a really good partner if you're going to use Canva, or even if not. I think you could have a less designed flyer than maybe something that somebody paid thousands of dollars for. I just got one in the mail actually from an estate planning attorney in my area. She's doing a direct mailer apparently, and it looks very nice, but I read it and I was like, I mean, I know what you do because I know what estate planning is, but as a consumer, I handed it to my husband. He's not an attorney. And I was like, would you hire this person? He was like, not really. I don't understand what she does. I was like, that's the problem. Like,
Right.
so just that's where we need to focus is what problem do you solve and can you convey that? And it's a work in progress for sure.
Yeah, it's never you're never gonna be done with, like, your marketing, your branding, your pitch, your logo, all these things. Like, my logo is very simple. It's just an S and an A that I wrote in I think it was 3D Paint, actually, like, on, like, a surface, and it's carried over, but now, like, I'm able to put it in a QR code on Canva, and I use Canva's QR code generator like crazy. It's awesome. because you could put a logo on the inside there. You could totally edit it. You could resize it. I I also have a one pager I do in Canva, or even before I get onto that, like with the logo thing, like for Lost Subscribed, the original logo was made in 3D Paint on a surface. But the second generation logo and the third gen logo, which is out there now, which is there's a motif with my background on for my virtual background, whether it's for my firm or for Lost Subscribed, it is all made in Canva, and it makes it great. Like I'm able to make it look like I have a backlight behind me, but that's just a editing feature in Canva, right? And they have these three-dimensional like images and stuff. So there's like this cool hexagonal tech-like thing in my background. Well, that's one of these things that's available to pro users that I'm able to leverage and edit and manipulate in Canva, all very intuitively. And so folks have asked me like, how do you do the virtual backgrounds? Like that's how I do it. I do it all in Canva and I play around with it and I have fun with it. Also in Canva, I've got a one pager that I made. And again, I started with a template. It's far less creative, but it's very similar and it's a little bit more bullet pointy. And it asks the question. And this actually is something I want to talk about with pitches too, but it says, why subscribe to legal services? Like, and that's what I'm trying to answer, right? So very similar. Get back to what you enjoy in your life and your business. Offload. And here I have more space because the fonts are a little bit different. So offload legal needs to an attorney with 10 years of experience. So on the one pager, I'm actually saying, 10 years, or I should probably update that now to over 10 years of experience because I've crossed that threshold now. And it's very similar things to on the other thing. And then summary of services. And I have that bullet list, but above the bullet list that's on the flyer, I have unlimited scheduled 15-minute consultations for Zoom or calls, unlimited messaging with the attorney on the client portal, right? And so I'm able to like say a little bit more on a one pager that's like an actual like sheet of paper sized document. And then because the bullets leave this empty space, that's where I slot in my QR code with my logo, bring folks right to the website. And then I have questions and it's for more information, go to this link, book a call using this link, email support, call or text this other number. And I hyperlink that because realistically, like I'm probably sharing this one pager digitally, although I do have physical versions just in case in certain situations that I print on slightly nicer paper.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And what I didn't hear, except for one tiny bit, and you actually couched it or put it through the lens of how it actually helps the client, is how long you've been practicing. But it came after client, will get all of this benefit because I've been doing this so long. But it wasn't about you. There wasn't anything about this is me. Here's my photo. Here's where I went to law school. Right? Like, here's how fancy I am. It's all about the services that you're delivering. And I think as long as folks are doing that, that's going to get the most return in terms of a pitch. And that's what you'll continue to hone in on. I just did something similar. My child's school was doing a fundraiser, and part of being a sponsor was you get to put a flyer, like a 8 by 8.5 by 11, into all of the take home folders. So I did the same thing and I sat there on a blank screen initially and I thought, what do I want this thing to say? I don't want it to be a letter about me. Like that's the last thing I want. So I said I was for an estate planning. It was the focus that I did. I just did 7 things every Colorado needs to know about estate planning. It wasn't about me, it didn't say necessarily sign up with me, it just I want you to know these are the things you should probably know. And it just did 7 little kind of mini paragraphs with icons and and designed it in Canva, but same thing, it was more about how can this resource help you, potential client, or just any person who may then pass it along. Maybe that person doesn't need help, but their neighbor does. It really is just about focusing on the consumer. That's, I think, the best pitch you could ever come up with.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just doing something to help someone will make them think positively about you, but it has to be genuine. I know it's kind of like what was that Adam Grant TED Talk where he was like, people who use Firefox or Chrome are like more likely to succeed or something. And so people are just like, oh, well, just go download and use Firefox or Chrome. No, it's about the person who doesn't use the default browser. There's something about you that makes you go and download, not the default browser. And that's the part of you that's going to help you succeed, not just because you use the browser. So with all that having been said, right, like do it for the right reasons and do it in the right way, and just make sure they know how to contact you, make sure you make it easy to get in touch with you, and I think it'll be successful. One other thing that I found was more engaging is, say you don't wanna do a jingle for your pitch,
Everyone
is
should, though.
totally. You should ask a question to get started. So one of the things I like to ask, and you could do this in different ways, is I like to start with, because at the end of the day, most of what I do is like redlining or drafting contracts. Is I say, "Who? Let's see a show of hands. Who here likes reading contracts?" And like no hands go up, and then I see maybe there's a lawyer or two. They smile and they like kind of raise their hand. I was like, "Well, guess what? You never have to again for a reasonable price." Right? So like you tie it into what you do by asking a question, and that's just how I do it. Extrapolate that, apply it to your situation. Another question I like to ask is, and it's less of a question and more of a statement, but it's like a do you know? Like, did you know that most lawyers, if they really needed to, couldn't afford their own legal fees?
It's
Well,
depressing.
when I started my law firm because I wanted to be able to afford myself, which means you can too. Like that's part of it, and I tie it into my mission, and so now they know he's a mission-driven lawyer, right? And so, like, it's there's a little bit of reading between the lines with that one, but then I know the potential clients will get it, and so, like, asking a question or being a way to talk about yourself without talking about yourself, that could be good for the pitching situation too, and that's usually in person for in-person pitching. I went to, like, 2 to 3 networking events a month for, like, 2 years until I actually got really good at this. So it was just trial and error, watch what other people do, and see successful pitches and not successful pitches, and it's a great way to just troubleshoot that, is just go to a bunch of networking events, where it makes sense for you. And Lauren, for you, the only reason I even offer, like, these very simple, mostly automated estate planning packages at a super affordable rate is at every single networking event where my context is, I'm here trying to get business owners, small business owners as clients. Without fail, sometimes it's salespeople who go to these things or biz dev people. They or the business owner, they don't care about all the general counsel work I do. They say, "Hey, do you do estate planning?" Like, I need a will. And it's like, well, here's all the reasons you should also consider a trust. Yeah, I get that, but I just want a will. Okay. Will, powers of attorney for healthcare and property, and living will slash dying declarations, all in a automated package for you really affordably, right? So like I think there's opportunities, even if you don't think, well, why would I go to a Chamber of Commerce event? I'm an estate planning attorney. They are far underrepresented at these types of business networking things are the estate planning attorneys. Well, in particular, like business owners that own a business, that's a level of estate planning work I don't even touch because that's too specialized. And so I do refer that out locally here, but there's a need. So definitely if you're thinking, well, I'm immigration, I'm estate planning. Why do I need it? Well, employers might employ immigrants. Like there's all kinds of opportunities at like getting involved with your local chamber of commerce.
And if nothing else, like you said, it's a great opportunity to practice. And if you're practicing on folks who are not maybe not actually in your target market, even better because they don't care, right? But you can at least go in the exercise of actually practicing. So you've given me more inspiration to actually get out there and be uncomfortable and go and join these chambers and go to these networking events because I think if nothing else I'll just remind myself it's an opportunity to practice what I'm going to say when I am in fact in front of somebody who may be the perfect target client, then at least when I deliver it to them I'll feel like, "Oh, I've done this 25 times. I got this now." And then the confidence comes through.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Any final takeaways on, pitching your firm and or what, like, things you're using or any other materials, anything else?
No, just knowing your problem. I will say the StoryBrand framework is a really great option if you're struggling with how to define the problem and being able to put that into words that most folks can understand. So if that resonated with you, you understand the importance of being able to define the problem but want to do so clearly. That has been a system that has worked really well for me. But between StoryBrand and Canva, that's pretty much how I make my elevator pitches and any kind of collateral is just following those 2. So it can be done pretty simply as long as you are intentional about it.
Well, we could probably talk even more about this, but we really want to try to keep these at a really good length for you to get back to your practice because in 2025 we're telling you all about how to run your practice. And so for our next few episodes, we're going to be talking about tech. Technology. So this was just a taste of just a couple of tech tools. We're going to get deep into tech into the near future here. So tune back in next week where Lauren and I are talking tech. Yes, tech. Yeah.
The best one.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Make someone's day by sharing this episode with them. The best way to get in touch is to follow and message me on LinkedIn. To get extra content, subscribe to the newsletter at www.lawsubscribe.com, where you can also become a paid subscriber to get episodes and content early. Until next time, this is Mathew Kerbis with Law Subscribed.